Abolition or nothing. The other politician in the country associated with abolition is someone who doesn't usually agree with Tom Mulcair, Saskatchewan Premier Brad Wall. Welcome back to the House.
Thank you.
You are, of course, in favor of getting rid of the Senate, but you have also said you don't have any plans to actively campaign to get rid of it. Why not?
Well, I mean, we're going to encourage other premiers to consider the position. I'll do that. I'll take that opportunity at the summer meeting, and everyone knows our position, and we tried to make the case at other premiers' meetings, and we've tried to make it publicly. And so there's been a change, obviously, in terms of some of the premiers, and maybe this is a chance to revisit that discussion. But I mean, I guess reform was always was our preference, but it just, I would argue that as tough as abolishing would be, nigh unto impossible, it might even be harder to reform it in the proper way, because if we just simply start electing senators, we couldn't support that in the West because it would make permanent what we think is an imbalance in terms of the number of seats in the Senate for Western Canada. We already have Rep by Pop in the House of Commons, and so the Senate reform would need to require some sort of rebalancing. And so that makes it even more complicated. And as hard as abolishing it is in terms of the Constitution, et cetera, I think it might be marginally easier to do that.
Another premier, your neighbor there, Greg Selinger, has just joined in calling you for the abolition of the Senate. So that you're up to 2 already. That's not bad if you need all 10 provinces or 7 representing 50% of the population. I mean, you say you're going to talk about it. Do you have to do a charm offensive? How do you get people to come around to your way of thinking?
Well, I think you just make the case that the country would function fine without it. The alternative to not reforming it and not abolishing it basically is the status quo. And in 2015, a country like Canada having an appointed upper house, that's not accountable to the people. And I think we're way beyond that. As I've noted to the premiers in the past and would likely do so again, a much more effective upper house, I'm obviously you can't see it, but I'm making finger quotes, a more effective upper house, frankly, right now on a de facto basis, are the provincial governments. We have a decentralized federation, and the provinces have a lot of jurisdiction in a lot of important areas that touch Canadians' lives in very direct ways. And so there's a certain amount of accountability that comes to the system, to the federation, because of the strength of Canada's premiers. And we'll just maybe have the conversation, not formally. I don't think it'll be on the agenda, but there's always a chance to raise it. And perhaps the new Premier of Alberta will also be supporting abolition, and so we get a little bit more momentum for that.
But isn't this the time? I mean, by the logic that you just put forward there, if you are acting sort of as the second chamber anyway, isn't it your responsibility as premiers to put it on the table, to take this momentum that has come out of this report and the fact that Canadians are talking about it and get it on the agenda and start making it happen?
Well, I think the other provinces know that Saskatchewan would certainly support a discussion of it at our meeting in Newfoundland and Labrador. They're hosting this year the summer premiers meeting. Our officials are talking at that level now. Typically, the agendas for these things are set, and I mean, the AG report might change that. We would welcome the discussion. The other potential force for good in all this, I'm positive that people like yourself, Rosie, you folks will be there covering the premiers meeting, and I'm sure when premiers take their turn at that mic, we're going to get asked the question. So you're very powerful.
Depends on the day. You've made the case, sort of, but obviously you are grappling with a senator who has been suspended in your province, Pamela Wallin. Again, she's still being investigated. There have been no charges laid, but she has been suspended. Beyond that and the expense issue right now, is there anything concrete that has or hasn't happened in the Senate that has been bad for your province that you can point to and say, yeah, this isn't helping us in any way?
You see, in our legislature, we've already passed the motion that would be the constitutional requirement of the provinces in order to have the amendment to abolish the Senate. And during that debate, the example I used was the issue of the near takeover of the Potash Corporation by BHP. We were opposed to that particular takeover. And I simply noted that we were looking for support in Ottawa for our position. And if the Senate truly is a sort of a voice for the regions and senators are a voice for the provinces and not the parliamentary caucus that they're a part of, then you would have thought, given the huge support in Saskatchewan for our position to oppose the takeover, that the Senate would have been there. And the fact is that, maybe there was some closed-door discussions where they voiced concerns, but we certainly didn't hear about it. That would have been a great example for for the Senate to sort of stand up and say, well, we're going to represent the region on this, and also join them in lobbying the federal government to say no to the takeover. By the way, in the end, as you know, the federal government did respond, and we're grateful for that, but not because, in my view anyway, because of a voice from the Senate. That was a good example of what could have spoken well for, maintaining the upper house even as it is. But there's just I can't think of any examples where people of the province of Saskatchewan or other Western provinces would say, thank goodness we had the Senate to save us in this, on any particular issue.
Okay, Premier, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks. Have a good day.